I was never supposed to fall for her. That's what I told myself over and over again. But the heart doesn't follow rules. It just feels. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm 27, born in Seattle, lived a fast, messy life in New York City for the cage. Past few years jumping from one freelance job to the next, loving the wrong women and chasing things I couldn't name. After a tough breakup and a burnout so heavy it sat on my chest like a brick. I moved back to Washington to clear my head and figure out what the hell I was doing with my life. Home wasn't much. My mother passed when I was 24, and since then, the house had turned quiet and cold. My stepfather, Mark, still lived there stiff, sharp-talking. Always perfectly dressed like he was headed to court even on a Sunday. He was never cruel to me, just distant. I think I spent my whole life trying to earn a nod from him, but it never came. I didn't expect warmth from him when I came back. And I definitely didn't expect her. Ava. She was his wife, his second wife, and she wasn't supposed to be in the picture. I'd seen photos, sure, from Christmas cards and old Facebook posts, but seeing her in person, living, breathing, laughing quietly in the kitchen as she made coffee that first morning, it felt like I'd walked into someone else's dream. Ava was 36, just 9 years older than me. Not a girl, not even just a woman. She had that rare energy, soft but strong, a kind of grace that made the room slow down. Tall, brunette, skin like porcelain kissed by the sun. With these deep green eyes that didn't just look at you, they studied you, like they were searching for your truth. And God, did I want to give it to her? I knew the situation was complicated. Hell, it was all kinds of wrong. But it wasn't lust, at least not just that. Started slow, casual. I was staying in the guest room, and every morning she'd already be up, barefoot in the kitchen, wearing one of those long cardigans that brushed her knees, the smell of fresh coffee filling the house. She'd ask me how I slept, smile gently, never pushing, never prying. But those conversations grew longer. We'd talk over breakfast about music, about the books we were reading. She told me about growing up in Oregon, how she used to write. Poetry before life got in the way. I listened. Really listened. She had a voice that soothed you without trying. Mark, as usual, wasn't around much, traveling for work, meetings, golf weekends, and Ava. She was always alone. Started seeing it in her eyes, the kind of loneliness that doesn't scream. Just sits quietly in the corner of your heart, waiting for someone to notice. I noticed, and she noticed me noticing. That's when it started. The tension, unspoken, electric. One night it rained. A full, heavy Pacific Northwest storm. Mark was gone. Ava made lasagna. Just us. She lit a few candles because the power kept flickering, and we sat across from each other in that dim golden light, our shadows dancing on the walls. We talked for hours. I told her things I hadn't told anyone about how I felt lost, about the emptiness I carried around like a backpack. And she didn't just listen, she looked at me like I mattered. And when the silence came, it wasn't awkward. It was charged. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for her wine glass, and I felt it in my spine. I looked at her, and she looked right back, no flinch, no denial. It's pure, raw connection. That's when I realized we were standing on the edge of something dangerous, something powerful. I wanted her, yes, but more than that. I wanted to know her, to protect her, to hold her like no one had ever dared. She whispered, "This feels like a dream." I leaned in slowly, and she didn't move away. Our lips touched just barely, a soft, aching kiss that lasted a breath too long. Then she pulled back, eyes wide with fear and heat. "Ethan, this can't happen." I nodded, but neither of us moved. The thunder outside cracked like a warning, but inside it was quiet, too quiet. That night, we didn't go further. We just sat together on the couch, inches apart, the air heavy with everything we wanted to say and couldn't. But from that moment on, we were no longer just two people living under the same roof. We were a secret waiting to happen. And deep. down, we both knew. It was only a matter of time. Asterisk after that first stolen kiss. Everything changed between Ava and me, though no one else could see it. The house, once a place I had thought of as a temporary refuge, became a quiet battlefield where every glance, every small touch held a secret meaning. Mark was often away on business, leaving Ava and me alone in the stillness of the house, the silence wrapping around us like a thick blanket. At first, we tried to ignore what simmered beneath the surface, the way her eyes lingered on me longer than they should, the accidental brush of our hands when she passed by in the hallway. But that night, the night the rain poured again, like it was trying to wash away our doubts, everything spilled over. Mark was gone for the weekend, and Ava invited me to stay for dinner. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her figure just right, and her hair was loose around her shoulders in soft waves, smelling faintly of jasmine. She cooked the meal slowly, humming to herself in the kitchen, and I watched her from the doorway, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. As we ate, the conversation flowed easily, far easier than it ever had before. We talked about the dreams we had given up on, the regrets we tried to hide, and the loneliness that crept into our bones like cold winter air. She told me about her childhood in Portland, the poetry she wrote that no one ever read, and how she felt trapped in a life that wasn't hers. I shared stories from New York, how I'd chased a dream that always felt just out of reach and lost myself along the way. With every word, I felt us drawing closer, as if two broken souls were trying to fit their shattered edges together. After dinner, we moved to the living room, the rain tapping a soft rhythm against the windows. She poured us wine, and for the first time we didn't pretend the tension wasn't there. I could see it in her eyes, the same hunger, the same confusion that mirrored my own. Our hands found each other again, this time without hesitation, and she didn't pull away. We talked about what we both knew, but refused to say aloud the line we were dangerously close to crossing. "This is wrong," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. I nodded, but inside, I was shaking. Because I knew that once we stepped over that line, there would be no turning back. Then, slowly, our lips met again. This time, the kiss was deeper, more urgent, full of the longing we'd kept locked inside for so long. It was both gentle and fierce, a desperate attempt to hold on to something real in a world that felt cold and empty. We pulled away, breathless, our foreheads resting together as the storm raged outside. "What are we doing?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I can't stop." That night, we didn't sleep. Sat close, sharing stories and laughter, tears and silence. It was the kind of night that stays with you forever, the kind that marks a before and after. We didn't cross that final line of no return, but the space between us was electric, filled with a promise we both feared and craved. Over the next few days, we kept our distance, trying to act normal around Mark and the few friends who came over. But every glance, every accidental touch reminded us of what we shared in the quiet hours. It was intoxicating and terrifying all. At once, I found myself staying up late, replaying every moment, every look, every word. I knew we were playing with fire. I knew it could destroy us all, but I couldn't help wanting more. Ava was no longer just my stepfather's wife. She was my secret, my escape, my greatest temptation. And as summer stretched on, so did the silent promise between us that one night, when the world fell away, we would no longer have to pretend. That night came sooner than either of us expected. A weekend when Mark was out of town, the house empty except for us, and the slow, steady sound of rain. Ava found me in the library, reading a book she'd recommended. We sat close on the couch, the air thick with unspoken words. Then she reached for my hand and said, "I can't do this anymore." I looked into her eyes, those green eyes that seemed to hold all the secrets and sadness of the world, and I knew what she meant. We gave in to the fire we'd been trying to deny, That night, we made love slowly, carefully, as if trying to memorize every inch of each other's skin. It wasn't just physical, it was a connection so deep, so raw, that it scared us both. Afterward, she cried quietly in my arms, tears mixing with whispered confessions about feeling trapped, about wanting to be seen, loved, and understood for who she really was, not just as a wife or a shadow of someone else's life. "This can't be real," she said between sobs. "But it is," I whispered back. We both knew the truth, that what we had was dangerous and fragile. It was a secret that could destroy families and lives. But it was also the only thing that felt real in a long, long time. That night, as the rain fell outside and the house held its breath, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. We had crossed into a world where love was tangled with betrayal, where desire met guilt, and where every touch carried the weight of everything we stood to lose. But for those few hours, all that mattered was us two broken people finding something real in the dark. After that night, nothing about our lives felt the same. Nothing ever could. Ava and I had crossed a line we could never uncross. And now we were living in a strange in-between space, somewhere between reality and a dream we both feared would collapse. The house felt smaller, every hallway tighter, every glance more dangerous. But somehow, we kept moving through it like everything was normal. Mark returned from his trip unaware, carrying his usual coldness like armor. He barely acknowledged Ava, barely noticed the shift in energy, the way her eyes no longer searched for him at dinner. How her laughter had come back in tiny bursts, but not for him. And maybe that was the saddest part. She was his wife, and he never really saw her. I did. I saw her pain. I saw her need. I saw her, and she saw me in ways no one ever had. We knew we were risking everything: family, reputations, sanity, but we couldn't stay away. We tried. God, we tried. But love doesn't play fair. Some nights we'd pass each other in the hallway and say nothing, pretending we were just two people with nothing between them. But even silence felt like a spark. Then there were nights we gave in. Nights when Mark was away again and she'd knock on my door softly, like the quietest question, "Ah!" Or I'd find her in the garden with a blanket wrapped around her, staring at the stars like she was begging them for answers. We made love like we were starving for connection, for warmth, for meaning. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional, deep, and sometimes so overwhelming that we'd lie there afterward in the dark, not saying a word, just breathing in sync like we were trying to remember what peace felt like. She told me she hadn't felt loved in years, that Mark married her for image, not for heart. That he wanted a wife to show off at business dinners, not a partner to build a life with. And me, I told her I never felt truly seen, like all my past relationships were surface deep, and she was the first woman who looked into me and didn't flinch. We were messy, complicated, flawed, but with her, I felt real, alive, and for the first time, maybe even worthy of love. But the guilt was never far behind. Every morning after, I woke up with a knot in my chest, knowing I was betraying the man who helped raise me. And Ava, she carried her own shame like a weight around her neck, especially when Mark would kiss her on the cheek, or talk about their future plans like he still believed in them. But he didn't love her. I think he just loved control, loved knowing she was his. That made the secret burn a little less, though not enough to ignore. We started fantasizing about leaving, about starting fresh, maybe moving to a small town, maybe Vancouver or somewhere quiet in Oregon. I'd get a steady job. She'd start her art studio like she always dreamed. We'd live simple, free. We talked about it like it was real. But deep down, we both knew reality doesn't work that way. Secrets like ours don't stay hidden forever, especially in a house built on tension. Then one night, everything cracked. Mark came home early from a trip. Ava and I hadn't expected him, and I was still in the kitchen with her, too close, too casual. He noticed, not in a loud, obvious way. Just a shift in his expression, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. way people do when they don't quite understand something but they know something is off. That night, he barely spoke. Ava avoided his touch. I couldn't sleep. My gut told me things were shifting. The next morning, Mark left early. Ava stood at the window, arms crossed, staring out like she was waiting for something to fall apart. "He's starting to suspect," she said quietly. I nodded. There was nothing to say. We'd played a dangerous game, and now the cracks were beginning to show. But despite the fear and guilt, I couldn't let her go. I loved her. I hadn't said the words yet, but I felt them so deeply it scared me. I'd never felt this way before, so tied to someone's soul it hurt. And I saw it in her too, in the way she'd hold my hand in the dark like it was the only thing keeping her from drowning. One night, when we were lying in bed, she whispered, "If I leave him, would you come with me?" My heart stopped. Not from panic, but from hope. Real hope. "Yes," I said, without hesitation. Because even with the mess, the shame, the betrayal, we were real. What we had was more than just sex or escape. It was love. It was the kind of love you don't plan for. But once it finds you, you can't forget it. We knew the storm was coming. We just didn't know how close it already was. Asterisk, the days that followed were heavy like walking through fog. Not sure where the road ended or when everything would crash. Ava and I were still seeing each other in secret, still wrapped up in the heat of stolen nights and whispered promises. But something had shifted. We could feel it. It was like the walls around us had ears now. Every sound in the hallway made us tense. Every call from Mark made Ava's hands shake just a little. And even when she was in my arms, soft and warm against my skin, I could feel the fear rising in her chest. But that didn't stop us. If anything, it made our connection deeper. We made love slower, held each other longer, and talked about a future we weren't sure we'd survive to see. I remember one night lying on the floor of the guest room with her, a candle flickering beside us, and she looked at me with those green eyes and said, "I feel like I've been asleep my whole life, and I finally woke up." I kissed her gently and told her I felt the same. And I did. Loving her wasn't just about passion, was about peace. When I was with her, the noise in my head quieted. She made me feel safe, seen, wanted in a way I'd never known. But reality doesn't care about love, it crashes through, whether you're ready or not. One Thursday afternoon, I came home from running errands. And I knew something was wrong the second I stepped into the house. The air was different, still. Cold Ava was sitting at the dining table, pale, her fingers tied around a mug of untouched tea. She looked up at me with wide eyes and said, "He knows." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, he knows?" I asked, heart racing. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside were photos. Grainy, zoomed in, but unmistakable me. And Ava kissing by her car, another one of us holding hands through the back window. "He hired someone," she whispered. "A private investigator." My knees buckled. I sat down across from her, mind spinning. The photos were weeks old, meaning he'd known for a while. Meaning he'd been watching us while pretending nothing had changed. "What do we do now?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Her lips trembled and I could see the fear in her eyes. That night, Mark didn't come home. No texts, no calls. Just silence. Ava barely slept. I stayed with her, holding her through the dark hours as her body shook in my arms. She was terrified not just of what he might say, but of what he might do. And I couldn't blame her. Mark was the kind of man who hated losing control. The next morning, he finally returned. The sound of the front door slamming shut made the entire house jump. He walked in like a storm calm on the surface, but you could feel the thunder underneath. He didn't look at me, not once. He went straight to Ava, placed the envelope of photos on the counter, and said coldly, "Pack your things." She stared at him, her whole body shaking. "Mark, please," but he cut her off. "You made your choice. Then he turned to me, eyes dark and hollow. I took you in like a son. And this is what you do. You think I didn't see the way you looked at her? Like a dog in heat? I wanted to say something, to defend her, to defend us, but nothing came out. I'd never seen him like that before. Broken, angry, humiliated. He walked past me like I was invisible, went upstairs and slammed the bedroom door shut. The next few hours were a blur. Ava packed in silence, wiping tears from her cheeks. Followed her, unsure if I should help or just stay out of the way. My chest was burning. 100 emotions swirling: anger, guilt, heartbreak. We had talked about leaving together so many times, but now that the moment was here, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like grief. So we loaded her bags into her car. She turned to me and said, "You don't have to come. I won't ask. You two ruin your life for me." I grabbed her hand, looked her straight in the eyes. "You are my life, Ava. I already chose you." She broke, then fell into my arms, sobbing like the weight of everything had finally become too much. We ended up in a small cabin 2 hours outside the city, a place she used to visit as a kid. It was old, dusty, half forgotten. But it was quiet, safe, and, for a little while, that was enough. We sat on the porch that night, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars in silence. "Do you think we'll survive this?" she asked. I didn't have the answer, but I held her hand and said, "We've made it this far. That has to mean something." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that until the sun started to rise. The world we left behind was broken, yes. But the love we found, however wrong it started, was the only thing that felt true. And we were willing to fight for it, even if we didn't know what came next. The cabin became our quiet world, tucked away from the judgment, the chaos, and the guilt that chased us. It was small, just one bedroom, creaky wood floors, and a kitchen that smelled like pine and old memories, but to us, it felt like freedom. We'd sleep in late, tangled in each other's arms, wake up with the sun pouring through the curtains and the sound of birds outside. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. For a while, we allowed ourselves to pretend. Pretend we were just another couple starting a new chapter, not to people who had shattered someone else's life to be together. Ava started painting against she'd set up a canvas by the window, barefoot in her oversized sweater with her hair tied back loosely. I'd watch her from the porch, coffee in hand, heart aching at how beautiful and fragile she looked in that golden morning light. I started writing. Again, to something I hadn't done in years. The words poured out of me now, full of truth, pain, and love. Our days were slow, soft, wrapped in laughter and deep talks under the stars. But as the weeks passed, reality began to tap on the windows like cold wind, reminding us we hadn't truly escaped anything. Mark hadn't contacted her since that night, but Ava still checked her phone with a quiet dread, as if she expected his rage to come crashing through the trees. One morning, she found a letter on her windshield, no stamp, no return address. It was from Mark. Just one line: "You'll regret this." That single sentence stayed with us for days. She didn't speak much after reading it. Her eyes looked distant, haunted. And I couldn't protect her from it, not really. I could hold her, love her, promise her a new life, but I couldn't erase the fear. And slowly, that fear started changing things between us. We were still in love, God, more than ever, but something heavy had settled between us, like a shadow we couldn't ignore. She started sleeping with her back turned. I caught her crying in the shower more than once. I tried to ask, but she'd just say, "I'm okay," and force a small smile. But she wasn't. One night after a quiet dinner, she finally spoke. "I keep thinking maybe we rushed this. Maybe we hurt too many people." I felt her words like a punch to the chest. "Do you regret us?" I asked. She didn't answer at first. Then, softly, "No. But I regret the way it happened." I nodded. I understood. We didn't mean to fall in love. We didn't plan to destroy anything. But love doesn't always come clean. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of the mess and refuses to wait. That night, we made love like it was the last time's low, tender, desperate. Like we were trying to memorize every part of each other, just in case. Afterward, she whispered, "I'm scared." I held her tighter. Me too. Because as much as we loved each other, we both knew the world wouldn't forgive us easily, especially not Mark. The next morning, I woke up to find her gone. Suitcase was missing, her side of the bed cold. She left a note on the table. "I need time. Please don't come after me. I love you." My hands shook as I read it. My heart shattered. She was gone, just like that. And I had no way to find her, no idea where she'd go. I stayed in that cabin for days, hoping she'd come back. Every car that passed made my heart race. Every knock at the door made me jump. But she never returned. I called, I texted, but nothing. The silence was louder than anything I'd ever known. I started to wonder if maybe she felt what we had wasn't enough. Maybe the guilt got too heavy. Maybe she couldn't live with the wreckage we'd left behind. Or maybe, worst of all, Mark had gotten to her. I had no answers. Just the ghost of her laughter in the cabin walls, the scent of her perfume on the pillow, and the ache of her absence in my chest. For the first time, I realized love alone might not be enough to hold two broken people together. It hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. But even through the pain, I didn't regret loving her. Not for a second. 'Cause she showed me what real love could feel like: deep, messy, honest. It was never about perfect timing or clean beginnings. It was about connection, the kind that changes you forever. And no matter how it ended, she was a part of me now. Scar I would carry with pride, a story I would never stop telling myself. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. But I knew this. Some people enter your life like fire, burning fast, bright, and beautiful. And once you've felt that heat, the cold never feels the same. It had been 3 months since Ava left, and every single day without her felt like walking through fog. I stayed in the cabin for a while, holding on to the last place where we were happy, hoping maybe she'd return. But the days stretched on, and she never did. The silence was loud. Her absence was everywhere, in the empty side of the bed, the untouched art supplies by the window, the cold coffee mugs that used to hold morning laughter. I thought I was strong enough to wait forever, but eventually I had to let the dream go. I moved back to the city, not to start over, but just to survive. I got a job at a local bookstore, quiet, steady, the kind of place where no one asked too many questions. I kept my head down, tried to forget. But forgetting her was like trying to forget how to breathe. Some nights I'd wake up thinking I heard her voice. Sometimes I saw a woman with the same hair at the corner coffee shop, and my heart would stop for a second until reality hit and reminded me she was still gone. People say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't. Heal it just teaches you how to carry the pain a little better. One rainy afternoon, I came home to a small brown envelope slipped under my apartment door. No name, no return address, just my name in her handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, short, shaky, emotional. She wrote that she had been staying with her sister in Seattle, trying to put her life back together. That she needed space, not from me, but from the guilt. She said she loved me, that she still loved me, but didn't know how to live with what we had done. She wasn't sure if I'd ever want to see her again, but she was ready to come back if I still wanted her. My chest tightened with every word. I sat down on the floor, the letter shaking in my hands, tears building behind my eyes. I didn't think. I didn't wait. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove all night. When I got to Seattle, the sky was gray, and the city felt like it was holding its breath. I stood outside her sister's townhouse, soaked in rain, heart pounding like I was 17 again. I knocked once, then twice. And then the door opened. And there she was, standing there in a soft sweater, Her hair pulled back, eyes wide with shock and emotion. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. I stepped forward, took her face in my hands, and kissed her like it was the first time all over again. The world fell away in that moment. All the pain, the distance, the regret didn't matter. We just held each other on that porch like the storm outside couldn't touch us anymore. She whispered, "I didn't know if you'd come." I held her closer and said, "I would have crossed the whole country if I had to." That night, we lay together for the first time in what felt like forever. No secrets, no guilt, just love. We talked until sunrise about what we wanted, about how hard it had been, about how much we still needed each other. She told me she had been going to therapy, trying to understand the choices she made, trying to forgive herself. I told her I never stopped loving her, that even on my worst days, it was her face I saw when I closed my eyes. We didn't make promises that night. We didn't talk about marriage or futures or what anyone else might think. We just agreed on one thing: we didn't want to lose each other again, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, we took it slow. We rented a little apartment together just outside the cities. Small, quiet, with big windows that let the morning light pour in. She started painting again full time. I kept writing. We didn't pretend the past didn't exist. We talked about it, cried about it, accepted it. Because the truth is, love isn't always clean. It's not always convenient. Sometimes it begins in the most impossible places. But that doesn't make it less real. If anything, it makes it stronger. Ava wasn't just my stepfather's wife. She was the woman who broke me and rebuilt me. The woman who made me believe in soul-deep love, the kind that scars, the kind that saves. We still get looks, sometimes, from people who know the story. We still carry the weight of the choices we made, but we carry it together. And when she curls up next to me on the couch or laughs at something I say while her eyes shine, I know this: no matter how wrong it started, what we have now is right. It's real. And I'd choose her all over again, in every life, in every version of this story,